Delinquent. In 2022, the Australian people decided to give the Albanese Labor government a chance. They trusted the promise from Mr Albanese that life would be cheaper under his government. Well, how did that work out? Well, we know food has gone up 13%, housing by 14%, rent by 18%, electricity, accepting those sort of one-off things that Labor has put in that they're calling cost of living support, which won't last for long. It's gone up 32%, and gas 34%. In my home state of South Australia, we sometimes pay up to 45 cents per kilowatt hour versus places in the world that are down around 13 cents per kilowatt hour. Experts around the world say that it will only get worse because of the policy direction of the Albanese government. When it comes to housing, the Albanese government promised 30,000 affordable homes. What have they delivered? 0 new homes built, as estimates highlighted those few homes that have been delivered are actually repurposed existing housing stock. So another promise not delivered. In contrast, the ACCC highlighted in December of 2021, at the end of the Coalition's government term, that there was an 8-year low in electricity prices under the Coalition government and their policies. And the Coalition's policy going forward is in line with the OECD and the International Energy Agency and the expert economists and engineers of the world who say that we can reduce the cost of power, increase the reliability of the power and reduce emissions through the use of including nuclear generation as part of our mix. The Australian people also trusted the Albanese government on defence. They trusted Mr Albanese when he said in March of 2022 that he vowed to provide defence the resources it need to protect Australia. Well, how did that work out? The Australian Strategic Policy Institute, in their independent analysis, has highlighted that despite the promises of funding in the future, in the actual 3 years of delivery of the Albanese government since they have come to office in March in 2022, funding in real terms has actually gone backwards by about $1.5 billion. And we see them robbing Peter to pay Paul across a whole range of projects, some $83 billion worth of cuts across air, sea, land and space, which has decreased Australia's military capability. And so in 4 or 5 weeks' time, the Australian people will once again get to go to the polls and decide on who they wish to govern this country. And so, as one of my colleagues said, Senator Scarr just previously, one of the key questions people should be asking is, are you better off than you were 3 years ago? And the answer for the majority of Australians is no. And that's because the government has been distracted for almost half of their term by things like the divisive voice campaign that cost $500 million that could have been far better spent. They've been fixated on an ideological approach to energy that is flying in the face of global experts on energy policy, and most disturbingly, they have been delinquent in their responsibility to properly resource what both sides of politics acknowledge is the first priority of government, which is the defence of the nation. So when you look at this budget, again, independent experts are saying that it is failing to respond to the real security threats that Australia is facing. The signature support they're saying they'll give to Australian people is a cup of coffee a week in 18 months' time. That's not helping families dealing with grocery bills today, rent bills today, housing stress, rent pressures today. And nor is it investing in Australian industry, despite the promises of a future made in Australia. What defence industry tells me on a frequent basis is that they see the funding going offshore to international primes in the main for capabilities that won't be delivered for another 5 to 10 years. And Australian jobs are disappearing or being put at risk, and the future is not being made in Australia. So when Australians go to the polls in a few weeks' time, are you better off than you were 3 weeks ago? Do you want a government that's distracted and delinquent and fixated by their ideology, or do you want a government that has a good track record and plans that align with international best practice in engineering and economics? Australia needs a Dutton government to get back on track.
Authorised Senator David Fawcett, Liberal Party, Adelaide.